Good morning, everybody. You're very welcome to our business support webinar this morning. My name is Roisin McCalliskey and I'm the Development Manager for FSB here in Northern Ireland. Our webinar today is looking at the SME internship opportunities with Queen's University Belfast. Queen's have a range of business support for SMEs, and we're delighted to introduce Mark Gallagher with us this morning. And Mark is the Employee Engagement Consultant for the Careers, Employability and Skills Department of Queen's University. So the webinar is being recorded this morning. So if you're watching the recording, obviously any questions that you have will not be answered live here. So if you can contact Mark or ourselves afterwards, we will try to get you the answers to anything that you've seen throughout, excuse me, throughout the presentation. If you're joining us live today, there is a Q&A box and we would ask you to put any of your questions in there, and when Mark is finished his presentation, he'll be able to share with you the answers to those or catch up with you afterwards. If you're an FSB member, you're very welcome and you'll know some of our benefits. If you're not an FSB member, just to let you know, FSB is the largest business support organisation in the UK. We have over 145,000 members across the UK, and here in Northern Ireland we're just shy of 6,000 members. To be an FSB member, you basically have to have between 0 and 250 employees, and your membership entitles you to 2 strands of support. So firstly, our tangible FSB benefits. So those include a 24-hour legal and employment helpline, a debt recovery service, a tax inspection service. So a lot of those backroom resources that SMEs and small businesses maybe can't afford to have within their small teams. So FSB provides that tangible support. On the other side of things, then we have our campaign and lobbying and our events. So like today, we have our business support webinars. We have a range of virtual networking, in-person networking, and in-person events. And if you visit the FSB website, www.fsb.org.uk, you will see all those events, and you will see our in-demand webinars that you can rewatch, and a range of other resources such as our training and different services. FSB relies on our members to give us that authentic voice, so that when we lobby decision makers on various pieces of policy and legislation that are impacting small businesses, that we are actually getting what small businesses want us to do or what small businesses want us to campaign on. So it's very important when you see those pieces of communication such as surveys or calls to roundtables or to attend events, that you put the hand up and become very active members of FSB. We're an open door. If you want to contact us on anything from membership to events to some issues that you may be having, please do feel free to reach out to the local team. So I'm just going to hand over now to Mark. He's going to take us through a range of slides. Lots of good information on the internship programme, but on other services that Queen's University do offer to SMEs and businesses. So there's a range of really good initiatives out there, and again, it's about reaching out, asking the questions, and making those connections with Queen's and the other resources that are available. So if you, as I say, want to put any questions into the chat box, I'll join Mark once he's finished his presentation, and we'll go through any questions that you might have. So thanks again for joining us, and Mark, it's over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if you're happy enough, Mark.
Thanks, Roisin, for that introduction. Hopefully you can hear me okay, can you?
Yes, perfect. Thanks, Mark.
And can you see the slides okay?
Yep, good to go.
That's perfect. Roisin, thanks very much for having me along this morning and for the opportunity to speak to some of the FSB members, either live or potentially listening back. I wanted to take the opportunity to just explain a wee bit about the part of Queen's I work in to your members, just a bit of background to myself, and then I suppose, a wee bit of information on what a career service in university looks like nowadays, which is probably very different than certainly when I went through my university experience. And then, as you rightly said, I just want to talk about an internship program that we're targeting specifically SMEs, I suppose, and what would we say are students for short placements and internships over the summer 2024. And there'll be an opportunity for questions at the end, but that's pretty much what I want to run through this morning. So just a wee bit of background to myself. I suppose I've been in the higher education side of things for a long time now. I changed roles summer 2023 after working in one of the schools of Queen's for about 15 years. So I'll come to that a wee bit later on. The way the Queen's is set up is that there's 15 individual schools here. So I worked in the School of Biological Sciences for about 15 years. And I would say my role was looking after the careers programs in that school. So that's really inputs within the curriculum for first years right through to final year, with a really strong emphasis on a work placement program between levels 2 and levels 3. And the Biological Sciences School of Queen's, that's where the agri-food courses are housed. So I had quite a significant involvement with SMEs throughout Northern Ireland in that sort of agri-food sector. But we also worked with the life science sector, and we also worked with organisations who are interested in recruiting environmental students and sustainability types, which is a sort of key focus moving forward. But I've worked in this sort of recruitment space, or that sort of space where education and industry bridge. So I have a big interest in the development of our students from a student development perspective, but also very cognizant of how important it is to liaise with employers to inform all of the education inputs we have from a careers perspective with our students. So I sort of sit somewhere in that space between industry and employers. And I suppose because I've been in the university for quite a while, I have a good sort of sense of the way that the university works. So sometimes I can be hit with fairly random queries from industry, but typically can find out where to direct somebody. So the part of Queen's that I work in is called Careers, Employability and Skills. Now, most of you, when you think about Queen's, you think about the Lanyon building, which is sort of behind me here. I don't work in the Lanyon building, but I do work in the new Student Guidance Centre, which we call One Elmwood. So One Elmwood is the new building that replaced the old Student Union. Absolutely amazing facility. You're more than welcome to pop in if you're passing by at any particular point. There's restaurants, cafes. It's been a really, really important development for students at Queen's. So in a facility like this, the sort of staff that you find in our unit, which is called Careers, Employability and Skills, is a small part of the university overall, but there's about 40 people in our team. And that team's made up of an employer engagement team, which I'm part of. We've careers consultants as part of that team who work individually with the students doing one-to-ones, but also a lot of work within the curriculum. We also have a global opportunities team, which is responsible for both bringing students into Queen's, but also that our students are thinking about doing things internationally. And there's somewhere in the region of about 800 students at Queen's do that a year. A modern day career service has to be very slick in terms of the way we communicate with students. So we've got a marketing communications team that looks after all our socials, which is a sort of a daily task, but also running events. And the operations team within our service looks after our vacancy system, which I'll come to a wee bit later on as well. And we also have a surveys team as part of this area. So the Careers, Employability and Skills Service lives and breathes all things student development and careers, and getting students into the right types of jobs, and developing the right types of skills as part of their time at Queen's. So just some sort of the higher level types of things that we work to in terms of stats and comparing ourselves, I guess, with other institutions. So graduate prospects. So I suppose our service ultimately want to make sure that our students are working towards being in the right type of employment after their time on their course at university. So universities are metriced, consistently on an annual basis with this. It's called a graduate outcome survey. So all our students are surveyed 15 months after graduation. And at that point, they're asked whether they're in graduate level employment or further study, employment or further study. And you can see here, just in terms of this particular slide, the Queen's are absolutely moving in the right direction. So 2024, we're at about 89% graduate prospects, which is Something we're particularly proud of. I think we're the top performing university in the Russell Group for employability stats, and the lowest, the Russell Group University being sort of 15 comparator universities who are quite research intensive, research intensive. And 2% of our graduates were unemployed at 15 months, which was actually the lowest statistic. So the university we're doing lots of good things in this space, but the university have invest very heavily in careers, employability, and skills, and the sort of work we're all doing. Now, the bottom part of that particular slide, if you can just sort of see that, the structure, Queens, is that we're working to a 3-faculty structure. And underneath that 3-faculty structure, you've got 15 individual schools. And within those 15 individual schools, you've got over 200 undergraduate degrees and over 100 master's programs. And all of the service doing those particular courses are surveyed, to work into that graduate outcomes data. So I just wanted the next couple of slides just to really run you through some of the programs that Queen's Career Service offer to our students. So some people listening this morning might have been through Queen's themselves, might have kids that are going through Queen's, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles going through Queen's. We're very, very locally embedded. But it's just to give you a sort of sense of some of the things from a support perspective that students can access now as part of their program. So we run somewhere in the region of 100 between semesters 1 and semesters 2. We run over 100 programs. So those programs can be anything from your careers fairs, which I'll come to, but also mentoring programs, skills programs, leadership programs for females, enterprise programs. So every week there's a suite of things that are being advertised to the students that they can sign up for and register for. So the sort of things that we get them to do is really try and get involved from first year. We do things like personality work values tests, self-help resources. They've access to things like careers option by school and by sector. There's really comprehensive labour market information developed for students in terms of next options. Students can get information on where the graduates in their course typically go. And obviously, very obvious things. Everybody will think about career service and think about the very obvious things in terms of CV preparation, interview prep. But I would say that overall is a very, very small part of what a university career service done in the scale of things. Absolutely key for the students when they're getting that, but a small part of what we do. And the students can book in and browse. They can book in for events really the whole way through semester and have access to a careers platform called My Future. Last week we had, this slide sort of refers to our autumn careers fair, which takes over two days in October every year. We bring it, over the 2 days, there's typically about 140, 150 employers over the 2 days. We one fair in business, which is aimed at business management, IT, and the other day is specifically sort of science, technology, engineering. We had an event last week at Queen's, which is our spring careers fair. And just to give you an idea of the numbers, we had over 2,000 students came through the 3 locations on the Queen's site to speak to employers over that day. So marketed very heavily across the schools, and the student engagement's really, really good. And it's still a key way for employers to engage with the university and try and pick up young talent and get students engaged in the various programs that employers are maybe offering to them. So it's been brilliant that we've reverted back to doing this type of thing face to face, because over COVID, all of this had stopped. And for a couple of years, career services and universities throughout the UK and Ireland were really grappling with technologies to try and make this type of thing happen. But in honesty, it didn't work particularly well. So it's just brilliant that the students are getting a chance to get back out, get networking, and speaking to employers directly on site. We run things which you mightn't be aware of, things like widening participation mentoring programs. And if you're not entirely sure what a widening participation program is, typically your students that are referred as widening participation students are students who maybe the first time that a member of the family has went through university or has actually got to university. So as a career service, we recognise that sometimes students coming into university in that particular way do need additional supports. They might necessarily have the networks or previous experience in a household to sort of help them in the progression through university from first year, second year, third year. We also know that statistically those students are less likely to engage in career programs. And that's why we engage with mentors who are industry based. Over a series of appointments, we link the students up with mentors who can speak to them about various things from career plan and opportunities right through to the sort of things they could be doing as part of their degree program to help them progress, which is really important intervention in terms of just confidence building and helping those students through university experience. We've noticed at Queen's, I ran a session before Christmas that I spoke to Rasheen about as well. I think that was marketed through the FSB, which was on recruiting international talent. I suppose one of the things we're very aware of is that our student population at Queen's in terms of international students has really expanded in the last number of years. In the last 5 years. We've something in the region of just over 4,000 students who are international on campus at the minute. And with that, a really significant increase, we've had to really adopt and change our services to those international students as well. So the session I ran before Christmas was really on informing employers about what really is a fairly rich, diverse talent pool that sometimes employers don't necessarily think of. And there's been changes to the UKVs and inside the last couple of years to make it easier for international students to progress for 2 years into employment. But we run as a service all sorts of sessions for those students, because obviously if you think of a student coming from China, coming from India, coming from Southeast Asia, cultural differences, the way things are taught, the way things previously might have been taught, the fact that they're being taught in a second language. And a lot of those students come to the UK because they're very aware of the reputations that UK universities have. There's really good links to industry. They have a 2-year visa that they can apply for as well, which is quite attractive to those international students. So the sort of things that we do is really run sessions for CVs, cultural differences in terms of entering the workplace, building your person brand, and all of those sorts of things to help those international students gain experience and actually enter the workforce. And just another sort of thing that we've introduced over the last couple of years as well is a really useful AI tool. So obviously, as employers and small employers, you get CVs from our graduates on a fairly regular basis. So there's all types of supports for students to help with that. But we introduced an AI tool a couple of years ago called VMOC, and all students at Queen's have access to VMOC, and it's a pretty cool tool. Obviously, it picks things up, so students can upload their CV into the VMOC system, and over a minute to 90 seconds, it will scan the CV and give real-time feedback to the students. And they'll feedback on things like mistakes, grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes, format mistakes, the sort of language that's been used in a particular CV as well, that demonstrates a particular good use of skills. So the students have tended to really love that, and it's really improved the interaction that a student will then have with the careers advisor after to sit down and go through them, because obviously the human eye will not pick up on things like that, as well as the artificial intelligence tool will do that. And all students have access to that at Queen's as well. And I suppose we're very cognizant of the service that technologies are changing all the time. So and will continue to change over the foreseeable, will continue to change, full stop. So we're constantly sort of looking at the sort of things we can do to make our service better for students. Okay, so just some stats on employers and jobs, just to give you sort of sense of the types of things we do in the background with employers. So, my job is, in my previous role, I dealt with students and employers. This role is solely employers, so I still work in sectors like the life sciences and agri-food. I work in the law side of things, but as part of my role, and I said this to Roshan when I met towards the end of 2023, I'm very, very keen to work through the enterprise agency network and through FSB as well, in terms of really informing, small businesses outside of that sort of Belfast region and over west, that Queen's are open to approaches to help companies recruit, because I can see very clearly that there are acute skills issues currently in certain sectors and coming down the line in other areas as well, due to sort of demographics up to 2030 as well. So we are very much what I would say is we are very much a recruitment service for business. And it isn't necessarily always a recruitment service that you might think of as a business. You might think of your local papers, you might think of, Indeed, you might think of posting things to NI Jobs, and all of those things can work well. But also think of your local universities as an option to do that as well. So in the last sort of this last year, we advertised over 2,800 jobs to our students, and that's made up of over 50% graduate jobs and 24.3% placements. We've got over 2,000 companies registered on the system. There are lots more employers registered on the system, but the accounts may be lapsed. So that means that they maybe haven't had a need to recruit over a certain period of time. But over 2,700 contacts on there as well. So all of those contacts are registered on a platform that we call My Future. And it's really easy to register with, and encourage anybody in the session this morning, or any of the SB members, to get registered with that system, because then you're picking up all the comms that come from our service. It mightn't be the case that you have a vacancy to advertise, but we'll keep you posted on sort of careers fairs, the sort of things that are happening at Queen's from an employer's perspective. And you'll be introduced to leads and contacts that you can potentially work through as well for various other things. So that goes on a continual basis. There's no sort of the cycle has changed in terms of graduate recruitment, and companies really contact us all year round in terms of trying to find suitable graduates. So the last point there is the 24.3% replacement years, and that can be a really good way to start working with Queen's, is to sort of link in with the schools who are offering placements. So I mentioned at the start of the presentation, there's a fairly complex infrastructure of people working in employability and trying to help students in industry make that link. So you've got the 40 people I mentioned in the service that I'm in, but then within those 15 schools, a lot of those schools have got individuals that are working with students within the curriculum to run placement programs and internship programs as well. And I suppose I act as a point of contact for a lot of my industry contacts to try and link through to some of these courses here. So say, for example, the electronics, electrical engineering, the agri-food side of things, with biological sciences, life sciences, pharmaceutical analysis, chemistry, chemical engineering, really, really high demand in those particular subject areas. Actuarial, finance, business management, business IT, computer science, and software, obviously just the whole technology side of things, which is really popular. These guys run these two particular schools here, business management, business IT, computer science, run really, really big programs with significant numbers of students out on 1-year placements each year, as well as the School of Psychology have introduced placements inside the last couple of years as well. So it's a really good way to sort of make that sort of initial link with Queen's, and an absolutely way to identify young talent coming through. And if I was to say sort of anything, I know that the nature of this morning's presentation is to FSB members who tend to be smaller. The one thing I would say is that the bigger companies who come to our careers fairs are absolutely sort of targeting students even as low as first year. So it's not necessarily about just offering the graduate job. It's also thinking about the ways that you can build your brand and sort of to engage with the university that we bit earlier. So the jobs board at Queen's is called My Future. It's free, it's easy to use, there's no charge involved. You advertise as and when it suits when you set up an account. You can register part-time jobs, full-time jobs. Once the roles are advertised, you as an employer can target the individual schools that you're interested in. So if it was a technology student or a business student or a science student, you can make that very clear when you're promoting your role. And the students that you target also then get a weekly email from the system. So it's really intuitive. The students get emails into their inbox. Now you're always relying on the student reading the emails in their inbox, and following up on that particular role. But we do have a sort of way to leverage a bit of influence in terms of applications then as well through that network of staff in the university. So this link will take you back to My Future. And one of the really cool things that it does, it actually collates responses. So say, for example, if you had a vacancy closing in a month's time, you can have all of those applications sent to you at the end of the process. So really, really simple to use. Okay, so Roisin introduced the internship program, which is why I sort of reached out to FSB towards the end of last year. And I mentioned to Roisin last week just as well that the program's closing quite soon. So this presentation has come probably a wee bit later than I hoped to do it, but I am happy to keep that open for any members that might be in this morning that are particularly interested in engaging quite quickly. So an internship is an American term, but it typically refers to a shorter period of experience over the summertime. It can be anything up to 12 weeks. The particular program we're involved in is 8 weeks. The internships typically sit outside the curriculum over the summer holidays. And this particular program, we're sort of opening it up to, we're trying to target students that maybe don't have placements as part of their course. So the idea is really that if you're an SME or a micro business, we can part fund the salary for you. So we work with Santander universities to run this program, and Queen's also offer funding to the businesses that get involved to support sort of part fund the placements as well. So we mentioned here we're really targeting students who are underrepresented in the graduate labour market and who not may have the opportunity to carry out work experience as part of their course. As an employer, you can advertise a role with us and you can target whichever degree you want, but we do have a side of this that is open to NGOs and charities as well. So not every student at Queen's has the opportunity of a placement, and that's what we're trying to really help the students for this particular program's internships. So there's two options on it. There's a micro internship, which is 100 hours of work, typically during June, July. It's 100% funded. But the summer internship is really what we're trying to target business, essentially. So slightly longer, 8 weeks in duration, completed over the summer months, June and July. The Queen's exams finish towards the end of May. So students typically work June, July, and we 50% fund the salary for that 2-month period. Now, the benefit to an employer, and obviously, I suppose the thing is what we sort of advise employers to do is really identify a particular piece of work that you want done. It is a very short period of time. So something that a student can pick up for the business, something that makes commercial sense if you're taking somebody in on board. Obviously, there's be a bit of time invested by somebody to give them a bit of direction of what they're doing, but it can be cost effective. Obviously, there's a bit of funding here. Employers constantly feedback that we've had a really good response to this internship program, but a lot of the organizations we work with say they like having young people in the business that think differently. This generation absolutely think differently. They're digital natives. They're very capable in terms of their technology and the way that they sort of see their way around technology and doing things in that particular way. And then obviously they're coming from courses which are in many cases specific disciplines. It's a way to evaluate a student for potential graduate opportunities as well. So if you know that you've got a couple of things coming down the line and you maybe have opportunities, the business is moving in the right direction, and you're thinking of investing in staff over the next couple of years, it can be like an extended interview, but also you're starting to establish a link with Queen's as well and just working through that cycle with us. So the next steps for that particular program are we're closing the program down for applications by the end of this week. So Friday the 16th is when I'm hoping to hear back from any FSB members that might be interested. Just contact me directly. We're advertising things to the students from this week and next week. So just to think about a project or a mini project, lead generation, thinking about your socials, which seem to be quite popular as well, a bit of market research, a bit of administration that might be done, or if it's a bit more technical, there's a couple of SMEs that are sort of games related or technical in nature. There's an engineering company in there. So you have a think about it and send the details through, and hopefully you generate some interest in that. You shortlist for the program exactly the same way you would any other role. So essentially you are the recruiting organization. You advertise with us, students apply, and then you take them down a recruitment process you would for any other interview. And if you meet a suitable student and you feel like that student fits, the personality fits, the skill set fits, then you offer, but there's no obligation, as with any recruitment process, to recruit from us if you feel that you haven't had the response that you wanted, essentially. So that's a wee bit about the internship program, and that sort of finishes the presentation, Roisin, on my side anyway. So I'm just going to hand back the controls to you.
Great, Mark. Thank you very much, and really, really interesting. And I think, I suppose sometimes it's good to have a deadline quite close by, because it puts people in the notion of, right, let's look at this now. I think we'll have a question in just on the My Futures website now. I put the link in there, and just someone was asking for the My Future website link, so put that in. That's part on the Queen's website. Just so the deadline is now this week. You mentioned like the recruitment cycle, being different in some things. Is there another opportunity for the likes of this again, or if people miss it this time?
Yeah, I suppose I sort of maybe touched on that, Roisin, in the presentation as well. we tend to see there is a cycle involved in the way that we kind of do things at Queen's, and that's very much dependent on the way that employers approach us. But semester one, you do tend to find the multinationals are very active. It's very active, big finance sector, the tech companies, the big graduate recruiters do tend to target students in semester one. Our careers fairs are really well attended. But the placement teams in the schools that I mentioned a wee bit earlier on, they tend to be working really right through to after Easter time because the numbers are so high in those schools. And I suppose you tend to find people that work in our space are hugely committed to students, but also committed to the employers they're working with. So, they'll want as many students as they can actually get in the industry experience because if you've gone out for a year, Russian is what I'm talking about here, is the placement years. You asked about other ways to recruit. Because we would sort of see that as almost being the key intervention on a 4-year program. That year in industry or that year out it's really, really formative in terms of experience for the students, in terms of development and confidence and all of those good things. And plus all the soft skills that the students that employers tell us are absolutely critical. And we relay that to academics all the time to say, it's the soft skills, trying to integrate things that are really developing those soft skills within our programs here. So that's the communication and teamwork and interpersonal skills, as well as the use of technology and all of those things there. So the internships program, so internships tend to be a semester 2 type activity. So this is in and around the time that we would run internship programs. So we will do this every year. We run this every year in and around this time. But I suppose this is the first time I think we've probably reached out in such a significant way to yourselves through the FSB and through the enterprise agencies. And I think I mentioned that as well. I'm sort of keen to just open us up as being a point of contact for recruitment rushing, outside of what some employers, I know from my time in biological sciences, some employers don't necessarily think about Queen's because they think maybe that it's the big multinational companies that you're always working with. But we know in reality that that's not where all our graduates go at all.
Yeah, no, and I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of we are hearing from members and small businesses all the time, about that skills shortage and need for talent. And, it's another avenue that possibly people don't think of. And I know you touched on other ways, so if an SME needed research done outside of careers and stuff, is there a way of contacting them or going through that route? Or
yeah, there is. And that is a good question because there are it can be quite challenging rushing for a business to contact somewhere like Queen's to trade. So I'm very much the skills piece, the recruitment piece, making that link from a student at undergrad, postgrad. But then obviously we have an infrastructure. Queen's is a research intensive university, so that's a whole other side to the type of life that goes on in university. So obviously we've got lots of PhD students on site. We've got lots of postdoc students on site as well. But that research link is absolutely something companies can touch in with. So the two sort of channels that and I can send you information to share, Russian, on this with any of the business alliance side of things at Queen's. So there's a business alliance area. Do you remember I mentioned 3 faculties earlier on? Within each of the faculties, there's a business alliance person. And the business alliance person role is different than mine. The business alliance person is there to help organizations identify aspects of research that can maybe be taken to within the business. So there's a guy called Dermot Leonard, heads up business alliance at Queen's, and Dermot then looks after, would determine which faculty it would be best to link through to onto the academics in those particular areas. And then the other program that's worth noting is the Knowledge Transfer Partnership Program at Queen's. And it's a really interesting program. So Knowledge Transfer Partnerships really have 3 partners. They've got, firstly, an organization who's maybe got an idea to expand their business, but mightn't necessarily have the expertise in-house to do that. But they know that it might be sitting in a university somewhere that really like to find out if that expertise is in a university. So the knowledge transfer, so you need a sort of an organization, you need a university, which would be Queen's in this case. Ulster would do the same. KTPs are commonplace throughout the UK. but the difference being that there's a graduate employed as part of a KTP relationship. So essentially, the company and the university establish the relationship, work out where the expertise can fit, and then do a technology transfer project through a graduate for 18 months to 2 years. And it's a really, really great program. Some amazing KTPs have been advertised through our system, My Future, over the years. And it's a good opportunity for a graduate as well, because if you can imagine the graduate's taken some technology into an organization, doing that for a couple of years. So there's a fair chance if there's an opportunity opening up longer term, that person will be maybe taking that forward if that was agreeable. So the manager in that space is a lady called Lorraine Marks, and I can hook you up with, or any of your members that want to contact that side of the university. There's email addresses for both. So it'd be Dermot Leonard for Business Alliance and Lorraine Marks for Knowledge Transfer Partnership.
Brilliant. No, super. So basically the ways in which employers are now starting to engage with Queen's is changing. And, I suppose on the student side of things then, there's a good supply of students who are interested and keen to go through this way of recruitment then, I imagine.
Yeah, oh, no, absolutely. I think our sort of work is Russian career service. Our work is fundamentally changed. I've been in this space for almost 20 years now, but if you were to compare a university career service 15 years ago to what a university career service is now, it's night and day. Your students 15 years ago would have arranged appointments for one-to-ones with an advisor. That's essentially what career services, that was the service they offered. Maybe 40-minute appointments. It was proper career planning, but the inputs were with a very small number of students, because obviously that's very, very time and resource intensive. Whereas now the big shift in universities is that careers education is taught within the curriculum. So Queen's have been, senior management have been very instrumental in changing the curriculum to make sure that career services are involved, that we have employers involved within those schools. So coming in to speak to students about the opportunities that exist now, that are likely to exist in the future. And that's a direction of travel that I'm really passionate about, because I think the more employers can inform that discussion with students and with the university, the better, because things are changing at a pace. But I would say the students are very well informed now in comparison to maybe the way they were years ago as well. What we try to do is, we know that all the interventions are really, really formative, whether that's an internship, whether that's a development program, whether that's a one-year placement. So what we try to do is make sure that every student definitely has the opportunity to do that as much as is possible. And the vast majority of students, do come through with that, under their belt. I feel sorry for students. I have kids, at that age as well. I suppose there was a time, now students are being really challenged on the differentiators, the things that make them a wee bit different. Employers tell us to see these all look the same. So they're looking for the things that might be slightly different. That might be some, volunteering that they're doing. It might be sports that they're involved in. Placement is absolutely a differentiator. The students are now constantly being challenged to add and add and add and add. Where years ago, your 3-year degree might have been enough, but now there's a wealth of opportunity for them. But it's brilliant for students. It's a great landscape for the students that are engaging and have their heads up and are just open to doing things. There's great support, Saoirse.
Actually, just a question in from a student who looks like they're interested in this, but their dissertation period actually runs from June to August. So does that mean they're ineligible to do the internship during that period, or is it just time management? Or
No, they're fine if they're a registered student when they're applying. That's okay. Yeah, it's open to So we expect on the internship program that students will be final year students, that they'll be finishing their time. If they're a master's student, if they're a master's student, it might be slightly different at their graduation. It depends on the program they're on, but master's students typically graduate at winter time. They don't typically graduate during the summer period. But it might be, and it would, for that particular master's students, it would be a conversation they would need to have with their supervisor.
Yeah.
So if they're doing a project over the summertime, they'd need to work out, can they be released for 20 hours a week to do an internship or to do, some sort of part-time work alongside that. It depends on how intense the research they're doing for the supervisors.
No, that's great, Mark. I think I just have a question just about what the next step is again. So it is contacting you, particularly for the internship part, to contact you sort of more or less straight away. So
Yeah.
drop you an email and then you can start the conversation with the employer or the business. And then also looking at opportunities there just to get the conversation open, that there are opportunities through the KTPs and through research and just the likes of job fairs and things that I suppose you hit the nail on the head. Bigger industry, bigger organizations think that's maybe they've already been ahead of the curve on that, but SMEs and small businesses certainly have those opportunities as well, and I suppose that's what we want to share here today, that it's not just the big hitters that can become involved in these various programs, that the opportunity is there. And sometimes those, the likes of the internship, when it's a short project, that you may have SMEs who have some particular piece of work and they know it's only going to be 2 months, and they don't have the capacity for some of their other team members to complete that. But this sort of presents a perfect opportunity to have a dedicated person just working on that short-term project and get the ball rolling on it. So
that's it. I think that's it.
So so I suppose really just to thank you, Mark, for really informative, and it lets us know then that we can share when we're speaking to members and speaking to small businesses, outside of, and I know we have various networking events and things that I can, drop that in as well and say, like, have you thought about going down this route? I suppose then for anybody who is watching it, watching the recording here, just to be aware of those deadlines of getting in touch with Mark as soon as possible, and just to drop you an email and get the conversation started. So look, thanks again, Mark, for joining us this morning. And again, just if you want to visit www.fsb.org.uk, then you will see the range of events and communication and benefits that we have available. Keep your eye out on our social media. So we're on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and we'll share then any events or forthcoming projects or programs that we have coming up as well. So thanks very much for all your engagement this morning, and look forward to seeing you again in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks,